I went to the introduction of the Chevette back in the fall of 1975, and I have to say I was rather disappointed in the car at that time. It's a car that's been around for a long time, and while the GM has made, Chevrolet has made some attempts to upgrade the car and to keep it contemporary and so on and so forth, there's only so much you can do with a car that was introduced in 75, which means basically it was designed in 71, maybe 72, so it's more than 10 years old from that standpoint. I think it basically is a very old-fashioned car. Rear-wheel drive car in that size class anymore is pretty unique, basically. Most manufacturers have discovered that if you go to front-wheel drive, in the same amount of exterior space, you can package a much more efficient layout. There's more luggage room, there's more seating room for people, headroom, elbow room, leg room, so on and so forth. By and large, to me, it's a rather primitive vehicle that in the small car war that's going on today about, buying fairly economical transportation cars, it's a car that I find sort of the tail end Charlie of the group. It's outlived its time.
From what Tom has said, it sounds like selling against the Chevette would be like shooting fish in a barrel. But is it?
That could be a tough sell, despite what I've said about the Chevette being an old-fashioned car, because I think the first thing that any salesperson may have to overcome, or at least one of the important things he's going to have to answer, is what about durability and reliability with Renault products? There is the old history of Renault in this country, which a lot of people have long memories when it comes to that sort of thing. I think that I would point out that with the Alliance and Encore, you're looking at very up-to-date cars. You're looking at the Alliance, for example, was named Car of the Year in Europe several years ago by the European Motoring Press, pointing out that it was just a terrific car at a terrific price. You have room for carrying people, you have great cargo carrying capability with a very large trunk. It's a car that handles very well, has reasonably good performance in its price class, very economical, very efficient with fuel, and looks very nice. It's a nice, stylish car. It has, to me, the sophisticated European driving feel, and I think from our standpoint, naturally, at Road and Track, that's an important consideration. When you drive the car, you feel like you're in control of this car, that it will do what you want it to do, and it will do it very capably. With a car such as the Chevette, to me, in driving one, it's a very old-fashioned feeling car. It's not terribly well packaged from an efficiency standpoint in terms of interior accommodation. So I think that it's more a case of, do you want a traditional old-fashioned American car that does have the benefit of Chevrolet's dealer network behind it versus a Renault Alliance or an Encore, more stylish, considerably more modern, more sophisticated in design, and frankly, just a lot more fun to drive.
The Toyota Tercel, and I'm going to take you up on your invitation to be candid. That's one of those cars that outrages me, and the reason it does, I think that the Japanese have a well-earned and richly deserved reputation for building quality vehicles. They can, when they're on, they're hard to touch. The Tercel, on the other hand, is one of those automobiles that I am convinced that if I were to work reasonably hard at it, I could kick into a ball of metal in about 10 minutes. It is cheap. It is not worthy of the Japanese automobile industry. It is poorly equipped. You start looking for the things that you've come to expect in today's subcompacts, and they're not there. Or if they are there, by the time you've gotten them there, the price of the Tercel has risen to levels that you would associate with much more worthwhile cars. They both got four-wheel independent suspension. The Alliance has a rear anti-sway bar that I think helps. To me, it helps the handling, or seems to. I think the feel on the road there's just about no comparison, because the fragility, if you will, of the Tercel, I find it very hard to have any confidence in being in that car on the road. I don't have that problem with the Alliance. The Alliance Encore, there's again my traditional fallback on engines. The base engine I don't think is powerful enough, but the 1.7 liter optional engine in the Alliance, and it has electronic fuel injection, turns out to be a very drivable engine with the necessary power. Now, keeping in mind this car is not, nor is it intended to be a BMW. So those of us who like BMWs might wish for still more horsepower, except the car doesn't need more for what the car is, what it's designed to be. It's got plenty. And the engine in the Toyota Tercel is less than a 1.5 liter engine, and it's the only engine to my knowledge that they offer. And it's just simply not enough. On top of everything else, there's not enough horsepower. And of course the lack of horsepower is one of the reasons the car begins to feel not as substantial as I would like it to feel, I think, because of, something has been saved somewhere, or the 1.4 liter engine wouldn't even push it down the road. So I just, when the two cars are compared engine for engine, and even the base engine in the Alliance or the Encore, you just get a lot more bang for the buck, I think, in the AMC cars. The Tercel and the Alliance are very difficult to compare, because I quite honestly don't think there's any comparison between the two. The Alliance, you can, again, you can tell a lot by just walking around the car and looking at it. And you walk around the Alliance, and there's the nice French influence. And then you walk around the Tercel, and the quality of the paint is not as good. The Japanese don't really drop the ball on the fit in this case, but it just doesn't look like much car. The Alliance, on the other hand, I think looks like more car than it is, and that's not all bad when you're selling a car.
All right, let's talk competitive sales strategy.
To sell someone off the Tercel, I think ought to be one of the easier jobs. The car is inexpensive, but it's not that inexpensive, and when you fitted it out so it matches the standard options in the Alliance, I wouldn't think there would be 15 cents difference in the price if indeed the Alliance might be cheaper. It wouldn't surprise me at all to learn that it would come out a little bit cheaper. Then when you've got that going in, you're saying, well, we're essentially looking at a, let's say we're essentially looking at a parity price tag here. Then look at the two cars. The Alliance is larger to look at. It's better looking. I don't know. If I found anyone that would argue with that, I don't think I could continue the conversation. And you get not only more for your money, you get a better performing car. It's got a decent sized engine, even in the base engine, with the electronic fuel injection. With the bigger engine, the 1.7 liter, and electronic fuel injection. At that point, if a customer can't see the difference in drivability of the two cars, I don't know if you could save that customer or not. It's a very difficult. That one's a very difficult car for me to say anything that I don't think is belaboring the obvious. The two cars, I just don't think compare.
Okay, let's look at the Scirocco. Second generation from Volkswagen. The first generation came out with the first Rabbit. The second generation came out about 3 years ago. It's based on the same front-wheel drive platform that the Rabbit Golf is based on. In its second generation, it's gotten some new styling. Let's see, it's got a 1.8 liter engine, fuel injected, as are most good engines these days. 5-speed gearbox, middle of the road, let's call it, middle of the road power in terms of sport coupe performance, very good handling, and a very definite Teutonic feel. In fact, maybe this is where I should have started in a way, by saying that it is a taut German-feeling car. Its suspension, its controls, everything works in a very positive manner. Maybe in sort of an austere way. Not a lot of frills. The interior doesn't have a lot of frills. It's a basic driver's car, and you think sort of, although I'm sure people smile in Scirocco's, that the most enthusiastically driven Scirocco's are driven by people who have sort of a determined look on their face. The Scirocco's Germanic nature makes it a very taut, very, I don't want to use the word stiff, because stiff implies uncomfortable, and I don't mean that. But let's say stiff, and then qualify it in my next phrase. The Scirocco is stiff, where by contrast the Fuego is soft. French cars are designed for French roads, and German cars seem to be designed for German roads. The Germans are known for their smooth autobahns stretching from here all across the country, and the French have their lovely little cobblestone back roads that seem to have been around since the Romans were there. And the French car's suspension reflects that, just as the Scirocco suspension reflects its heritage. Once I'm underway, both cars have extremely well-balanced controls. That is to say, the gear shift pressure is what I expect it to be. I'm not surprised by it getting into third easier or harder than I might have expected, or I'm not surprised by where the clutch pedal is relative to the brake pedal. Their controls are well laid out, and they're well laid out for the enthusiast driver. The Fuego has more adjustability in that direction. It has a steering wheel that's adjustable for rake, where the Scirocco does not. Once you're out on the road, the Fuego continues that theme of softness. It sticks, but it's soft in its responses. Where the Scirocco, again, I hesitate to use the word stiff, but if I had my choice of which car I'd rather drive down a bumpy, twisty road, I'd much rather the Fuego. It wouldn't rattle me around quite as much. The Fuego is running a 2.2 liter, a single overhead cam, aluminum block, fuel injected. The Scirocco's got the 1.8. Single overhead cam, fuel injected, again, as all proper engines these days, they're fuel injected. They have about the same power, although I think the Fuego has a torque edge by quite a bit, just because it's a bigger displacement engine. But the same horsepower, but the Fuego has rather more torque. So right now, really, the Fuego has a good edge on engine, because it's, first of all, it's the more up-to-date engine. The Scirocco engine traces back, it's had increases in bore and stroke and so on, but it traces its heritage back pretty far. Where the Renault engine is a more recent design. It's also a bigger design, and it has a lot more torque. So as far as general drivability, the Fuego would come across as being a more powerful car. Again, compared to the Fuego, I find the Fuego's interior very warm, very inviting. I find the Scirocco's interior austere, sort of a serious place. As far as comfort goes, I think to some extent it depends on your size. I am more comfortable, being bigger than the average bear, in a Fuego than I am in a Scirocco. The Scirocco's headroom limitation causes me to have to make use of their adjustable seat height to its full lower extreme to get enough headroom, and even then I have to bring the seat back. Obviously all the cars in this class are 2+2s. I mean, the rear seat is nice for kids, and maybe for taking somebody out to lunch and driving 2 or 3 blocks. But I dare say not many adults would want to get in the back seat of either car and travel from here to cross country. But the Fuego is more roomy in back simply because it's dimensionally a bigger car. It's, I don't know, 10 inches longer overall, longer wheelbase by 1.5 inches or so. So just a little bit bigger package that does make the difference.
Based on what we've heard, the sales strategy in this situation would seem rather obvious. Let's hear how Dennis would approach a competitive selling situation.
I suppose the first thing I would do is look at their size. And if it looked like they would have trouble fitting in a Scirocco, I would play up the roominess of the Fuego. I would get them into the Fuego and drive it, because particularly if they can be educated in that difference between the the German feel and the French feel. I have a feeling a lot of people will admire that softness, that stylishness, or if you like, that lack of austerity that seems to be characteristic of a German car. The French car has soul. And you have to find the person for whom soul matters. There'll be some who won't. There'll be some who will look at it and say, yeah, it's a nice car, but I want to shop price. Okay, well then there are some price advantages. I guess they're pretty slim. A decked out Fuego, I think, goes for around $12,000. And decked out Scirocco goes for around $12,000. So there's not really a heavy price advantage to work. But there might be, just in terms of what equipment the owner's looking for. I think if what the owner wants is essentially a relatively stripped car, then there's a price advantage that means something. So I consider price as well as spirit. It depends what part of the country I was in. If I were in part of the country that had notoriously bad roads, in the springtime after the thaw, then I would definitely take them out in the Fuego and look for the worst road I could find, and just let them drive it or drive it down, and let them experience that suspension, because as we've noted in road tests, the Fuego, like other French cars, has marvelously supple suspension, and there'll be areas where that can be exploited. If the guy's into SCCA racing, I would suggest to him the Fuego Success. The Scirocco hasn't been really a hot car in racing recently. Let's see, what other things might I use? I guess I keep coming back to the difference in character of the two cars, and looking for the person who's going to respect that difference and who's going to be sold by that difference.
And that difference, if I may reiterate, is the French softness and style versus the VW's stiffness and austerity. Good points to keep in mind.
Yeah, the Ford Mustang is to me, the perfect rental car. It's not really terrifically well made. It's a fairly old design. The car was introduced in this present form, in its body shape, in about 1977, if I recall. Yeah, and it's typical old, last decade technology. It's a front-engine rear-drive car. It's a solid rear axle. It has over-assisted power steering. It's real light, overly light to drive. Ford doesn't like to burden drivers with any kind of feel of the road. It has that typical Ford mushiness about it, especially when it comes to steering, the steering system. The interior ergonomics of the car are not great. The seats are not very comfortable. The one thing it does have is a wide choice of engines. As far as handling goes, the Fuego, according to our tests, again, outhandles the Mustang, mainly due to the fact that it's a newer design. It's a front-wheel drive versus a rear-wheel drive car. And normally on a skid pad or in a slalom, a rear-wheel drive car would tend to do a little bit better than a comparable front-wheel drive car. In this case, it's not true. The Ford Mustang has a solid rear axle. It's equipped with fairly narrow tires, and it's not very well damped at all. And I think the Fuego, by virtue of its better tires, better suspension design, outhandles the Mustang in just about every significant handling test that we conduct.
As an example, let's see how a Mustang and Fuego handle this slalom course. First, the Fuego. As you can see, it's very nimble and relatively flat, even when making sharp turns. Now let's look at the Mustang. Here you see the dramatic difference in handling between the two cars. The rear-wheel drive just can't handle the sharp turns at speeds equal to the Fuego. Let's talk about engines. We barely compete with Ford's optional V6 and obviously not with their optional 5-liter V8 in terms of power. But when you compare our 2.2-liter four-cylinder engine versus their 2.3-liter four-cylinder engine, it's a totally different situation. Here's what Tony had to say on the subject.
The Ford engine, the 2.3 in the base Ford, is a really old design. It's a push-rod 2.3-liter motor, which does not get terrific fuel economy. In fact, it's a loser as far as fuel economy goes. The Fuego engine is by far a more modern design. It revs higher. It yields about the same horsepower output than the Mustang does, and it gets a much better fuel economy than the Ford engine does.
Okay, let's talk competitive selling strategy.
Okay, well, if I were a salesman, the first thing one of the points I would stress is first of all, it's styling and design. It's a lot better looking car. It's the kind of car that I would rather be seen in rather than a Mustang. Secondly, I would stress the front-wheel drive versus rear-wheel drive aspects, and also rear-wheel drive, which makes the car heavier and less efficient, and it encroaches on interior passenger space. I would stress the overall engineering of the Fuego, which is newer than the Mustang, and better fuel economy, and probably a little bit better reliability than the Mustang.